Joining me now back here on the Rich Eisen Show, one of the best in the business at what he does, a quarterback consultant of note for sure. His podcast, the QB Room Podcast with Kyle Allen, has new episodes dropping every single week. Tyson Bagent is his guest this very Thursday. Jordan Palmer, the founder of the QB Summit, back here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Jordan?
I'm doing great. I'm fired up for this slate of games this weekend. I don't know about you, but
I am.
I love that we got games typically on 3 days a week. This week we got them on 4, so the more the merrier.
That's right. That is correct. And I've got one on Saturday for college, Jordan, that I'm getting ready for. Getting ready for that game.
Hey, I like Michigan in that matchup. I saw a stat that was, the team that rushes for more yards is like 21-0 or some crazy stat. So if that's the case, and the team that runs the ball better wins the game, then I like Michigan.
All right. Well, I mean, and, I guess this Ohio State spot is a good way to jump off into our conversation about C.J. Stroud and what we're seeing in this league from him and how remarkable he has looked for the Houston Texans. I had Kurt Warner on the show yesterday. I'm like, hey, man, and all the tape that you're seeing, give me the quarterback that's seeing it the best and slinging it the best consistently from jump all the way to week 12. And he said Stroud. That was the first name out of his mouth. Why is it working so well for him, do you think, Jordan?
Well, I think it was a great situation. Now, my co-host on my podcast, Kyle Allen, was the backup, ended up starting a couple games last year. So I'm very, very familiar with the state of Houston Texans football 12 months ago.
Yes.
So one, the turnaround in general starts with D'Amico Ryans and goes on the way down there. But I think adding a couple of pieces, on defense with Will Anderson, but Tank Dell in the third round, that's actually a guy, because I've trained Clayton Tune out of Houston. So I spent a lot of time with Tank Dell. I told a lot of GMs, watch out for this Tank Dell kid. And I'm getting some texts every now and then. But I think it was just adding the right pieces to allow CJ to be able to have a very rhythmic passing game. And I think that's probably the goal of everybody. So it kind of sounds dumb to say, look, they want their quarterback to be in rhythm. Like, of course, everybody does. But they have the personnel to do it, and the way they've installed it. And it fits with him, because that's a lot of what they did at Ohio State. And then the part of his game that's evolved probably, and I've been around CJ since he was like 16, probably faster than I thought it would, is his ability to buy time and create time and space. And so you're just seeing great movement by him. And he's just constantly remaining a passer. And he called himself a ball placement specialist going through the draft process. And so far, he has completely backed that up, whether he's on time or whether he's off schedule.
So why do you feel the opposite is happening with Bryce Young so far this year, Jordan?
I just think there's too much on his plate. There's obviously pressure from being the number one pick. That's nothing new. But there's just so many holes on that roster. And similarly to working with Kyle Allen and understanding Houston's what's going on in the building in Houston, I work with Sam Darnold, so I very well understand what's been happening in the building in Carolina. And it's not that they're missing a wideout. It's not that they're missing DJ Moore. There's just holes across the board. And you can go back to that draft a few years ago when they selected, everybody on defense for the entire draft. And so I just think that there's a whole roster overhaul that needs to happen. And when that's the case, and you got a quarterback that's not playing well, and certainly not the first high draft pick rookie quarterback to have a bad rookie year. I mean, we saw this 2 years ago with Trevor Lawrence. But I think there's just so much on his plate. And the reality is his game is to not run around and create and solve all these problems at this NFL level when there's that many holes. So blame will be pointed at the coordinator and the head coach. But the reality is that roster is a long ways away from being competitive in this league, regardless of who their quarterback is. And the key thing moving forward, just like what happened with Trevor Lawrence, Trevor has a dumpster fire rookie year, all the Urban Meyer. And then the next year, he was able to reset. It didn't matter. And they went to the second round of the playoffs. So, Bryce having a tough year, even if it gets worse, I think it has no effect because of his self-confidence, because of how he carries himself and how he approaches the game. I don't see this lingering into his second year. It's just a really tough way to start your NFL career.
And let me keep picking your brain, Jordan Palmer, on your unique insight and a lot of things going on in the NFL right now. Josh Allen diagnosed for me what has been another interception late in year, but now a change at offensive coordinator that proved in just his first game with Joe Brady calling the plays to have a more efficient game, it looked like. What's your diagnosis of what's going on there with him?
Well, this was a pretty tumultuous offseason, with the uncertainty of Diggs and last year was big, just was tough losing Brian Daboll. And you can try and replace a great coach. You can try and replace a great player. But it's typically very difficult to do that when you have somebody who's elite in that role. Again, whether that's offensive coordinator or that's Matt Milano at middle linebacker, it's difficult to replace those things. But I really think that Buffalo is poised right now to go on a run. We heard Josh on the sideline saying I'm back. And I don't know that it ever went away, but when you feel pressed, like you have to make a play, is when decisions that you want back end up creeping in. And I think those are behind him. And I'm excited to watch, Josh and I've been around Joe Brady a lot. I've worked with Burrow for 5 years, so at LSU, and then he was with Sam Darnold in Carolina. And I think Joe Brady, one of the best parts of Joe Brady is he keeps things simple. He lets players make plays. He can call, LSU, and I know they had superstar receivers and the number one pick at quarterback, yes, but they ran 4 verts like multiple times a game because they weren't worried that the quarterback was just going to chuck it up in the air again. But let Joe Burrow work the pocket, make off schedule throws, or take something when it's there on time. And so I think if Buffalo heads in the direction of simplifying things and allowing some of these young players to play faster, you're going to start seeing guys like Shakir, who had a big game the other day, some random guys step up. We all know what Steph Diggs can do, but we're going to start seeing some more plays being made and the ball coming out of Josh's hands quicker, and potentially Josh running the ball, getting back to the style of play that Bills Mafia loves.
But the whole idea that Allen had to do too much, that was supposed to be removed from his plate with the overhauling of the run game. I know Damian Harris got hurt, but, Latavius Murray being there and Cook being the lead back, Dalton Kincaid being added in the draft because he's a red zone specialist. So where did some of the doubt just start to linger into a guy whose game is like all world? You could see it. Where did that come from?
Well, I think we all saw the Monday night game to kick off the season when Aaron got hurt and Josh turned it over and they lost to the Jets. But there was a patch there where Josh was playing really good football. I think he was still leading the NFL in completion percentage.
Yeah.
Whether he is today or was up until a week ago, it's the same thing. Either way, he's completing a lot of balls. But certainly when they can get under center and they can line up and run the ball effectively, which you can say about any team,
yes,
including your Michigan Wolverines, then you're in a position to, force the defense to play the way that they don't want to play. They don't want to play single high and have to stop the run because it's going to be really difficult to cover Stephon Diggs. And so I think the more that they can get those chunk yardage, James Cook is coming around more. Latavius Murray's really just kind of old reliable. And he's just always there and takes advantage of opportunities. But I think this offense, if they continue to trend towards being able to run the ball effectively, also with Josh, that they're going to get more of the one-on-one opportunities down the field for Gabe Davis and Steph Diggs and these other young players that are coming along.
Jordan Palmer here on the Rich Eisen Show, quarterback consultant, QB Room podcast with Kyle Allen. And again, the Summit Tour, we'll get to that in a second. Right here on the Rich Eisen Show, another story that's come home to roost in the NFL, unfortunately for Cincinnati and Joe Burrow, that you have some unique insight in, is Jake Browning is about to get his first career start for a Bengals team that is 5-5, weapons galore, because this team was set up to win now in what was Burrow's last year of being an affordable on the salary cap contracted quarterback. What's your insight on Jake Browning for Bengals fans here?
Rich, I'm bullish on this. We can spend the next 10 minutes talking about how devastating it is for Joe, for the team, for the fan base. But I think everyone sees that the same way. It's just an awful situation all the way around for Joe, not being able to play a complete year due to an injury. But this past offseason, so I've known who Jake Browning was, but I didn't watch him a ton in college. And then, he went undrafted. He wasn't in my draft group and didn't know what team he was on 2 years ago. And I've been working with Joe for 5 years. And so after, they got a chance to work together for 2 years, I got hit up by Jake this past offseason and ended up spending basically January to July with him. And, it was almost week by week, I started going, wait a second, this dude's really good. Like, he can spin it, his movement, a lot of this, a lot of stuff that we work on, like, happened quickly. And then as I got to know him better and do a little bit more research looking back, I kind of looked at it through the lens of how I evaluate draft picks. So right now, like before we got on this Zoom, I was talking to an agent about a quarterback they're recruiting, but like this time of year, that's what I'm doing. And so I break everybody down on tape for the draft. I want to have an opinion, and I can't wait until the draft. I got to do that in November and December. So I'm right in the thick of studying college guys. Well, when I looked back on Jake's career, several of the things that I look for in a quarterback, I saw in Jake. And one of them is, and this might sound silly, but at any point in this guy's career, was he like a baller? And I don't even care if it was high school. Did he like run around and make plays and like be the reason they won the game? Jake Browning threw 91 touchdowns his senior year in high school. That's a California state record at a good school in Folsom. So he was completely dominant in high school. And then you go look at Washington, great staff, some good receivers, all that. He's a 4-year starter. I mean, he's almost a 4-to-1 touchdown interception ratio. He was offensive player of the year multiple times, won the Pac-12 2 out of 3 years. Like, he was a great college football player, and he was making plays. And those receivers we thought were really good, guys like Dante Pettis, who got drafted in the second round, get to the NFL, and it's like, no, that's not what they were. Really good college players, but I think Dante's on his 4th team. And so you go, well, wait a second, maybe a little bit more credit for Jake. And what I saw Thursday night when Joe got hurt, and just think about this happened to Zach Wilson week 1. This happens when a guy gets hurt in the game, the starting quarterback gets hurt in the game, and he's out for the year, and you know it. There's this feeling as a backup, and I've lived it, where it's like, I'm not going in for the end of the game. I'm not going in to finish off the game. I'm the starting quarterback for the rest of the year as of this moment right now. That's a heavy, it can be exciting, but that's also a heavy moment. And what I saw Jake Thursday night in front of everybody on the road in one of the most difficult places to play, nothing changed. Similar to Joe, nothing changed. And just put a drive together, execute, use his legs, make some plays on the run. And then very telling, that touchdown pass he threw to Jamar Chase, I don't know if everyone was watching at the end of the game, but it was like a fade, and then he turns over his outside shoulder. Right. There's a lot of names for it.
Yeah.
That is a throw that is 100% timing. That was the first time he'd thrown that ball to Jamar. Because when you're the backup, you don't work things like that with the starting receivers.
Right.
So the first time he's attempted a throw that is 100% feel and timing, it went exactly where it was going. So I'm bullish on this. I think Cincinnati's offense is going to look really good with Jake Browning at the helm. And the other thing that backup quarterbacks sometimes are not afforded is when you take over for a bad team that's out of it, you get bad play from teammates around you. They're in it. Statistically speaking, the Bengals are in it, and both of his receivers are in a contract year. He is going to be playing with highly motivated teammates on offense and defense. So I think he's set up to have a very successful run here.
Wow. Jordan Palmer here on the Rich Eisen Show. You are going to be a popular man in Cincinnati with that opinion, but obviously you
maybe
no,
we'll
but
see.
It's also it's very well founded. Like you're not just pulling a lot of stuff out of thin air right there. So let me just hit you with the Tom Brady statement this past week here, that there's a lot of mediocrity in football right now. And part of what he's saying, I think, is born out of the fact that we constantly see new quarterbacks in the NFL over and over and over again. There were 68 different starting quarterbacks in the NFL last year. Jake Browning, you just mentioned, who's got, as you said, a good skill set. Tim Boyle making his first start for the Jets. These are 2 new guys starting this week. It's going to be 52 different starting quarterbacks in the NFL this year. I kind of feel like you are not only getting kids ready to be starters, maybe in the pros, but you're getting backups ready, because the kids are the backups now. It's not like folks like you don't really exist in the NFL anymore from your playing career, with what I'm saying. So why is this happening? What's your 2 cents on why we're seeing this churn right now? And so many unready, if you will, green quarterbacks are getting games in situations where teams need them to win playoff position contests. Jordan.
Well, I think Brady kind of referenced it. I don't have the quote memorized, but it was something around the lack of development.
Yeah.
And he was, I think, probably saying across the board, but certainly just on the quarterback side of things. But also, you got to go early in the process. And I had on my podcast, Dan Orlovsky came on a couple of weeks ago. And one of the things that he had pointed out is he thinks there's a lot of lazy coaching going on, and lazy coaching or lazy development, either way. But what happens is, from, let's just say, a throwing mechanic standpoint, it is the furthest thing down at the bottom of the totem pole for coaches in college and the NFL. Because if you're a college football coach, you're an offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, let's say, which is really common. Right? Whether you're the quarterback coach or you just have the clicker in your hand in that meeting, either way, you coach quarterbacks. Those guys, and a lot of the best coordinators in football right now, that's the setup. If you write down the list of everything that offensive coordinator in college needs to do over the course of a week, regardless of what time of year it is, fundamental mechanics of the quarterback is really far down the list. It's why there's an industry for guys like me, because if they have an additional hour, they're going to go watch tape, or they're going to DM a recruit, or they're going to do some media. Like there's so much on their plate. And then they have constraints. It's not all their fault. They have constraints over how much time they can spend because of the CBA, because of the rules in the NFL, the 20-hour rule. So they're limited on time, handcuffed, so to speak. And of the list of things that they got to get done that day, mechanics just falls across. And I'm uniquely positioned to have this opinion because when I do draft prep, I'm also, another way to look at that is I'm getting that college's finished product. And this draft class all have worked with a quarterback from the 50th college and several schools multiple times. I've had the last couple Clemson quarterbacks. And so you have time constraints with NFL and college coaches on their ability to work on those things. Then you have no connection. The strength staff, the physical therapy staff, and the coaching staff, they're not coordinated or synced. So the quarterback coach doesn't really know what's going on in the weight room. And the strength coach who works with the quarterbacks, he's never been in the quarterback room. And it's not an indictment on one team. This is at 32 programs in the NFL and every college. Rich, the bulk of what I do now is consulting for colleges. I come in and I call it interdepartmental communications consulting. I coordinate those groups for people and come up with an actual development plan. So when Brady said that, and it was on the ticker the other night, I took a screenshot of it and it's going in my deck because he's spot on. And this is a systemic problem. And the laziness comes because these high school kids are so much more developed coming out than they were before, that the mechanics slip through in college. They get drafted high. There's no time to work on those things. They just let the quarterback go in isolation and work with people like me, but then it's not integrated. And then all of a sudden, poof, throw them out on the field, and we're going to judge you in real time in the moment. So it's a systemic problem. It's not an indictment on the coaches or any one person. It's an old way of thinking. And I think we're starting to I certainly am, have a revolution in terms of how we're looking at quarterback development.
Well, I'll tell you what, if I'm an owner in the league, I want to handle this problem.
I've got a big meeting coming up in 2 weeks.
What do you got? What do you got?
Well, just in terms of presenting this to the owner, not to the offensive coordinator.
Okay, to an owner in the National Football League. Because you go, Jordan Palmer, because if I'm an owner in the NFL, I want to fix this problem. Because there, but for the grace of God, goes my team, and the way the cap is working, I'm not going to, pay a veteran to sit there. I'll just bring in a kid and hope he's ready. If I get there, and then I put the kid in, and he's unready, and I'm probably sitting there going, "Damn, we should have had the veteran." You know what I mean?
Well, there's also opportunities to find out, one, get experience for backup quarterbacks.
Right.
And two, find out if he should be your backup quarterback. So the LA Chargers is a perfect example right now. Okay. I think that they have like a 2% chance of making the playoffs or something, right? They got Baltimore at home on Sunday Night Football. Set aside Brandon Staley for a second and what's going to happen there.
Yeah.
Okay. But let's say they, as they probably will, get beat by Baltimore. So now they're statistically removed from the playoffs. If I'm the Chargers, I need to figure out if Easton Stick is good or not, more than I need to win 2 more games. So let alone Justin Herbert's hurt. So one of the key decisions that I would, if I was sitting there talking to an owner, what I would say is, you got 4, 5, 3, however many games left are at that point. This is a good opportunity to see if you should remain, if Easton Stick should be your backup, or if you should address this elsewhere. And it's not, I don't, if you ask me if I thought Easton Stick was good, I don't know. He's only played in the preseason. But you got a really good roster, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. I would use this season, not OTAs, to see if this guy should be my backup, if I should extend him or if we should move on. And so I don't think teams do a good enough job of taking advantage of getting a guy meaningful reps.
Right.
At the end of the game, I mean, I can go 3. I went 3 for 4 at the end of the game when we were getting smoked, but that doesn't mean I can start. And so I think teams whiff on opportunities to evaluate and get reps, meaningful reps.
I got it. I hear you, Jordan, but the NFL should not have December. The product doesn't get better, right? If the Chargers are taking on a team, let's just use this as an example. I love this conversation. Again, the Chargers have Buffalo week 16 at home. And you're a team like Cincinnati, and you gotta get past Buffalo, or because you're trying to get past Buffalo. Buffalo's trying to get a playoff spot. And in this game, now they got to deal with Easton Stick instead of Justin Herbert. How does that make this product less mediocre? You know what I mean? Like the league should not be in a position of using actual regular season games at the ends of seasons to evaluate kids. Like maybe there's a spring league. You put money in a spring league. I'm not saying create another NFL Europe, because I know scouts don't want to and teams don't want to fly across the Atlantic to see their prospects. I don't know, the USFL, XFL, all that stuff. Like, let's go. Like, that's the way to do it, isn't it, Jordan?
Well, and I'm the executive director of quarterback development for the XFL. And
look at us.
Potentially both. There's a potential merger with the USFL. And I think it's, I could talk on and on about how great of a job they did there. But if I want to know, and we're just, again, talking about Easton Stick here.
Yeah.
If I want to know that I can lose Justin Herbert and we're good, there's only one way to find that out. And that's starting an NFL game. So I hear you on the level of play, but they do this anyways. I've been on like a 2-14 team before. That rookie 6th-round pick linebacker is starting the last 3 weeks. They got to see if he's good or not. Right. And even with, we saw it happen in Arizona. So the trade deadline came, they shipped Josh Dobbs to Minnesota. We all know that, right? Kyler Murray had been practicing, but wasn't ready to go 100%, whatever it was. So it was a perfect opportunity to put Clayton Tune in, the 5th-round pick rookie, and give him and see what it looks like. And so teams do this. I just think they need to have a focus on this season. At what point are we going to find out if our 2 is worthy of being a 2, and how are we going to get him reps that are relevant for games? And then there's teams where, no, guys played a lot. Like Josh Allen's backup, my co-host, Kyle Allen, I don't know, he's got like 20-something starts. They know what he is, And then there's really good backups where we know what that guy is. I know what Jameis Winston is if he goes in the game in New Orleans. I don't need to evaluate that. But there are teams that have very green backups and game reps. Like, look, I spend the whole offseason doing drills with guys. It's helpful. But if you want to get good at quarterback, you need to play.
QBSummit.com. The 2024 Summit Tour has been launched. Quarterback transformative weekends for quarterbacks in middle and high school. 8 stops around the country, selling out fast. So go to QBSummit.com to get your spot. Great Thanksgiving to you, Jordan. I'd love to have you back on in December because I want to talk draft with you. That's when things really rubber's going to meet the road here. So let's do it. All right, brother.
Appreciate it. Happy holidays, man.
You bet. Same to you. That's Jordan Palmer right here on The Rich Eisen Show. Catch The Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.